This is where I start. Well, my parents growing up were abusive. My mother was an alcoholic and a drug user. My father was very abusive. He had a razor strap that he burnt all 6 of our names in. And when you did something wrong, you had to go get the razor strap and strip down, take your beating. My earliest memory of my childhood is I was in kindergarten. No one had picked me up after school, so a teacher had taken me home to her house for lunch. And upon coming back, my father was sitting across the street. And he took me home and accused me of running away. So he beat me. That was my youngest memory. Growing up, there were a lot of memories like that, but I got kicked out when I was 16. At that point, I was pregnant and on the streets. When I went into labor, my mother signed the baby away since I was a minor. Then I met my first husband, who was also abusive, physically and mentally. He enjoyed it. The last straw for me with him was when my youngest daughter was just a baby. He went to physically punch her. I pulled the car over and kicked him out. Drove home and packed his stuff. And that was my journey of raising my children on my own. I was working in a factory, renting out my couch to women and girls who were going through the same thing I had gone through and needed a place to stay and a roof over their head and some food. So we did that for a long time. I met my husband. Things started to change for me at that point, you know. Slowly, it took a long time for me to learn to trust him. But my journey with God really began. My daughter had lost my grandson, custody of my grandson, due to her being in an abusive relationship. DCFS stepped in and took my grandson, and we were fighting to get him back, and we had hired an attorney. And the night we were supposed to go for an emergency hearing, I prayed for the first time, I think, in my life. I opened up my Bible and I didn't know where to open it up to, so I just read what it felt open to, and I don't remember what the passage was, but I just remember praying like I had never prayed before in my life, all night. Got up to go to court the next morning, not that I slept, and I asked my daughter if we could pray on the way to court, which was not something I would normally do. But she said yes, and I prayed out loud. when we got to the courtroom, and I was just so afraid that we weren't going to get him back, you know. And I had bought a cross at a garage sale a couple of days before this, and I'd never believed in wearing a cross unless you believed in what it stood for, but I put it on that day. And when I wasn't praying, I was reaching up and feeling the cross. We're in a courtroom, and we're surrounded by lawyers and DCFS, and we're all so scared. And all of a sudden, I felt this weight on my shoulder. And I turned my head to see who had walked up, and there was nobody there. But the weight was still there. And all of a sudden, I felt this, I don't think calming feeling is the right word, but peace, you know. And the judge gave him back to us. And I remember just running out of the courtroom and hitting my knees and thanking him for what he had just given me. And I called my pastor up and told her that there was just this candle inside of me that had just been lit. And I don't understand it, but I want this feeling. I want that candle to grow stronger in me. Well, I was discouraged from sharing my story, you know. And as time went on, I had the stroke and numerous other medical issues had come up, MS. But I had had an argument with my daughter one time, and I decided to drive myself to a doctor's appointment. It was only 2 turns. And I'd been to this doctor for years, since my stroke. And I got in the car, and all of a sudden I was lost. My GPS kept telling me to make a U-turn. I knew that wasn't right. I finally found the doctor's office. I was able to get into the building. And I got into the elevator, and I rode it between 7 and 8 times, not knowing where I was going, what button to push. And finally, a woman who had watched me came up and helped me find my doctor's office. I'm terrified. I don't know what's happening to my brain. So I talked to my doctor, and it's time for me to drive home. And I called my husband up, and he talked me until I was in a place where I knew exactly where I was and how to get home. And I just pulled into this parking lot, and I started crying because I was so scared. And then a voice came from behind me. Why didn't you ask me? And again, I'm looking behind me and there's nobody there. But the voice said again, why didn't you ask me? So I went through some scary, terrifying emotions. And then the diagnosis of dementia came, which hit me pretty hard. And the dementia doesn't rob me of all the bad memories. It takes away my good memories, my happy memories. But through it all, I've learned that my faith is the most important thing to me. I know that God's got me in his hands. I don't know what's going to happen. Am I fearful for what my family is going to go through? Yeah, I am. But this is the journey he's given me. And I think part of that journey is to share this story, to find a way to do my mission. You know, whether that's to talk to someone in person or just to share this and not have the shame that I've carried with me most of my life. To know that the Lord has forgiven me for those things. I've done a lot of things that I'm not proud of. But he's forgiven me, which means I can forgive myself. Because for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why he would love me. That I wasn't worthy, the things that I had done to survive. And now I know that he's forgiven me. And that means that I can forgive myself. It also means that if I can help another person who is going through tough times, then that's what I want to do. I want to share this candle that was lit inside of me. I want to give that feeling to someone else. Because that day in the courtroom, I felt peace. And I felt a warmth inside of me that I never felt before. And I'm not ashamed anymore to tell this story. for a lot of years I wouldn't. But when you asked me, there was no second thought in my mind that this was what I needed to do and I wanted to do. So that's my story.